Hey, good morning. Welcome to Central Valley Talk Live. It is the 5th of April, 2022, Tuesday now. Good morning. I'm Austin Reed, coming to you from our Tower District Studios inside the Mike Briggs building. We thank you for joining us. We've got a few guests in store for you today, live and local, so stay with us. Hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Austin Reed on Air. We are going to kick off our 11 o'clock hour this morning with our very first guest. Give it up for Gini. How do you say your last name? I don't want to mess it up.
Grossenbacher.
Oh, that's what I was going to say, but thought I'd play it safe. Welcome. How you
Thank
doing?
you. I'm good. Thank you. Excited to be here.
Our pleasure. Yeah, we're happy that you came on. So you're an author. You're
Yes, I am.
Editor. And we're talking history today as well. But before we get into that, kind of give me your backstory.
Well, I come from a long line of people who love to read. My mother was our school librarian.
Oh, nice.
And I grew up in a doctor's office. My dad was the first ophthalmologist in Sacramento. And so, I just grew up with a lot of people who love to read, and so did I. And my uncle was a historian for the National Park Service back east, and he would take us to every Civil War battlefield when I was growing up. So I fell in love with the Victorian time period. And
I love
yeah.
Victorian houses. Oh, me and my wife, we could look at
I
hundreds,
know.
and it was never enough.
I know.
It's a cool period, though, yeah.
It is. And so then I became an English teacher, and my focus the last few years in teaching was high school English and history component. I taught advanced placement, and those kids were so excited about learning these small details about history. And of course, I was interested in women's history, especially the untold women who they don't appear in any history books. And some of them you really have to struggle to find, especially women who owned parlor houses and brothels and places like that, because when the census taker came to town, they were not there. And so they don't even appear in the census.
Huh. I did not know that.
So you will find, in fact, when you look at the census in San Francisco, 1850s, you will find very rare mention of the women that I'm trying to research because they simply went underground, when authorities came around.
That was kind of the thing to do, unfortunately, back then, huh?
Well, fortunate for some of the men who used their services, because the parlor house trade was different than what I expected when I started to research it.
It is.
What would happen is, of course, there were, brothels that were hovels, and people paid, for the throw, and they paid in gold dust back in the 1840s, 50s. But what happened is the trade developed over time because as San Francisco grew, especially in the mid to late 1850s, you saw a development of the French trade that brought in champagne, lace, elegance, cuisine. And so these parlor houses would actually entertain the mayor. They would entertain the dignitaries. They would entertain famous people. And the women were dressed in finery. And so one of the women, I got interested in her. Her name was Belcora. And she came from Baltimore via New Orleans. A gambler actually tossed a coin for her, a double eagle coin, and won her in a coin toss, and brought her to San Francisco. Huh. And that is true. We know that by historical record. Mm-hmm. So they got to San Francisco, and the vigilantes were beginning to stir. And, of course, the history of the vigilantes is they felt that the town was not taking charge of all the ruffians that were running the streets. There were a lot of people from Australia called the Sydney Ducks that were causing trouble, attacking people. There were crimes, knifings. So the vigilantes took charge, and they decided that they did not like her husband, who was a gambler because they thought that a lot of the crime came from gambling dens and establishments. The long story short of it, and I don't want to ruin the novel for people because it's called Madam of My Heart, is that the vigilantes took charge of him. And at the very end of the novel, there's quite a twist because he could be hanged.
We'll leave it right there.
Yeah.
Tell me, when did the book release?
Madam of My Heart came out in 2017.
Okay.
It took me, well, I retired about 8 years before that, and I got a writing editor, and I really, really worked with a writing group in formulating all the parts of the book, because as much as we want to say we know how to write a book because we've read so many, that's not really true. And even though I taught English all those years, it was putting together the chapters, making the characters come to life, and all of that that made a big difference. And so after that, I released the book, and you cross your fingers because you just don't know. And I just got so many positive responses, and so many readers wanted me to write another one. So in 2019, I released my second one called Madam in Silk. And that one is based on Ah Toy, who was the first Chinese woman to arrive in San Francisco in 1849 with bound feet. And we don't really know her past that much. We think that she came from probably an upper class environment because that's how they had bound feet, because it was a sign of upper class nobility, so to speak, in China. We know she came from Canton. And at the time, when she arrived, people just looked at her like this oddity. So men lined up to see her and paid her in gold dust just to look at her. Because the sailors got off the ships and word of Ah Toy got around, and she was so beautiful, she actually just sat up on a stool, took their money, and they looked at her for a period of time. So eventually she falls in love with this is historical record, she falls in love with a policeman named John Clark. And he helped shepherd her through all the trials and tribulations of trying to survive, own her own parlor house, employ her madams in a town that doesn't even understand her. And so I have all of that in the novel.
We've got about a minute left. What's next?
Well, I just published Madame in Lace. Madame in Lace is about Celeste, who from the first book, she's French. She decides to go to France to find her mother, who is missing. She was a brothel worker. She arrives in Montmartre in Paris and cannot locate her, only to fall in with a band of revolutionaries who want to assassinate the Emperor Napoleon. In exchange for her services as a courier and a spy, they will take her up north and help her search for her long-lost mother. And the assassination attempt that they are working on actually occurred in 1858. So
you dive all into it.
I dive in, and I have a wonderful time doing it.
What's the easiest way for people to purchase either your first book or now your second one?
Just look me up on Amazon.com under Gini Grossenbacher books.
Very good. Good to meet you.
Thank
you for coming on. Fascinating stories. So you'll have to come back and let's dive into maybe some other things as well. So I'll call you our new or our history
Women's
history expert. Does that work? That works.
Women's history.
Women's history, though. Right, exactly. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. I'm Austin Reed. You're watching Central Valley Talk. We'll be back in just a bit.
Thank you so much.